Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Haley Townsend, and I am the Communication Assistant at Compass. Hopefully you've seen or heard something about our survey, Where Do We Grow From Here? We've been advertising about it for about a week now. But if you haven't, this presentation is a great opportunity to learn more. In just a moment, one of our principal planners, Carl, who hopefully some of you know, will walk through the purpose of the survey, how to complete it, and why your voice matters in the planning process. Throughout the presentation, please leave any comments or questions in the comment box below. You'll see it if you move your mouse. It's usually in the little chat bar at the bottom. So leave your questions or comments there. And we'll go through those at the end and try to answer as many as we can. And I will make sure to mute everyone's microphones throughout the presentation so we don't have any distractions. But without further ado, please welcome Carl and his presentation.
Great, thank you, Haley. I appreciate that. I remember I got to speak to this group, I think it was last summer or fall, and I remember a lot of good questions about the transportation system. And I remember this group really felt like it had its pulse on the community and the needs. And so I'm really hoping to hear what questions you guys have today. Trying to get myself straight on this camera. And then really want to hear back from you, as we especially heard, as Haley mentioned, this survey that we have out right now. Our board of directors, our elected officials, specifically wanted to hear from the development community and realtors. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us. Hopefully it is a great opportunity for you as well, as we're going to share a little bit about Compass and about some of the challenges we're seeing, and about some ways that we want to hear back from the community about how to solve those problems, because it's really going to take a complete lift with everybody that we have, all the stakeholders in the valley, to really make sure that we can keep our quality of life with some of the challenges that we face. So, Haley, you'll let me know if my screen is not sharing what it's supposed to, but it's supposed to say National Association of Realtors.
Yes,
is that correct?
Indeed.
Okay, good. And like Haley mentioned, we have a survey out called Where Do We Grow From Here? It's the second in a 4-part series where we're really trying to find out how the Treasure Valley wants their future. We did a survey back in the fall, and we learned a lot of great things. We had over 3,700 people participate. We tried to do this survey in the meeting there at the hotel in Nampa, and I think connectivity issues kind of tripped us up. So, one advantage of us all doing this virtual open house is that we're not limited by a lot of people all logging into the same servers. So we hope that you can participate in this survey and really give us some good feedback there. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about what Compass is and does. I shared a little bit more about that last fall, so I'll go through that pretty quickly. I know that there's some new members or some that didn't get to attend previously, so please feel free to ask me any question about who Compass is. Then I'm going to talk about 4 challenges that we see to growth, and then the Ada and Canyon County Transportation Plan, which we call Communities in Motion. Our current one is Communities in Motion 2040 2.0, and really we're working on the next plan, which is Communities in Motion 2050. So we're looking out 30 years to the future and saying, what do we need to do? What transportation funds do we have? And how are we going to spend those most prudently, so that way we can build a transportation system that serves us over the next 3 decades. And then the most important part, as far as I'm concerned, is how you can be involved. And we really do need your participation today, and help us to get the word out about this survey, because it will really drive a lot of the decisions, the policies, the strategies that we need to make over the next several months, years, so we can have a future that keeps our quality of life. Compass, we are the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho. So we're an association of cities, counties, highway districts, others, health agencies, that plan for the future of Ada and Canyon County. And we really want to bring together stakeholders to make sure that we're planning a transportation system that not just moves vehicles, we can do that, but also make sure that we're building communities and building a quality of life, and making sure that we're working with each other rather than, maybe building systems that aren't coordinated and working together in a syncretic way to really improve the system. Compass is the forum for regional collaboration in Southwest Idaho. Like I said, we really want to bring together stakeholders from cities, highway districts, health districts, counties, Idaho Transportation Department, to really make sure that we're building communities. And our board of director is made up of elected officials throughout Ada and Canyon County. If you live in Nampa, you're represented on that board by 2 people from the city of Nampa. You're represented by 2 people from Canyon County commissioners, as well as Southwest District Health. And also, if you're in a highway district, you're represented by those. So you're represented by several people. Anywhere you live in the Treasure Valley, you're represented by at least a few people on that board of directors. And they really give us policy direction. But then we also have other steering committees that get into more of the technical work. We have a bike and ped active transportation work group, public transportation work group, freight work group, technical, and really all these help us to really bring together the information and help to look at what the transportation system is and needs in the future. So Compass has 4 main roles. We plan, and our main part of that plan is developing the long-range transportation plan for Ada and Canyon counties, looking out 30 years, figuring out what we need to do, implementing that plan through getting both dedicated federal money through Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration to build projects, add services, add capacity, but also looking out for competitive grants. We recently received a large grant for improving the interstate out in Caldwell, and that was a huge competitive grant that we were blessed to get, over $90 million that will help to widen the freeway out there. As you've been on the freeway, you're seeing that's already in action. We provide technical expertise. This is a variety of things, anywhere from demographics, so projections about where people will live and work in the future, travel demand modeling to look at the analysis about how people will move on the roadway network, as well as mapping, flying hiring consultants to fly our orthophotography, so we have really good imagery, so our cities can use that for a lot of the technical work that they do. And then the 4th role is to really facilitate those discussions. We are the regional collaboration group, and so we really need to bring together people, and as a council of governments, we really have the elected officials on our board that can really come together and discuss those regional issues that face all of us. We're no longer, a city or community that no longer interacts with each other. Almost anywhere you live in the Treasure Valley, you're going from one community to another across the county line, to get to work, to get to outdoor recreation, for housing. We're all in this together. So like I said, our current long-range transportation plan is called Communities in Motion 2040 2.0. And as the little icons you can see at the bottom of the screen represent the 8 different goal areas that we have, the elements, which go from transportation to economic development, housing, open space, farmland preservation, community infrastructure, health, and what am I missing here, Haley? I always get 7 of the 8, and the 8th one that I always miss is always something new. So, did I say economic development? Anyway, but we're looking at not just can we move vehicles, but are we building a system that helps us all to improve our overall quality of life? And in that long-range transportation plan, we're looking out 20 plus years. Really, we have to look out a number of decades to make sure that we're looking forward and making sure that we've are considering the ramifications of growth. It takes many years in the making to build an interchange, to build an overpass, to widen a road. And so really we have to have that long range horizon. And we do forecast that growth out. We look at how many people will live here in the future. We work with the demographic steering committee that looks at a number of different trends and analysis and forecasts to come up with that forecast that I'll share with you in just a moment. It is a multimodal transportation system, so we're looking at bicycles, pedestrians, buses, freight, as well as the automobile to make sure that we're considering all the different users on the transportation system. It's fiscally constrained. There's a number of needs that we have in the Valley for transportation. We can only put into our plan what we can actually have funding for and what we anticipate funding for. And so that really limits what we can do in the future. And it really makes us to make sure that, again, we're bringing together the stakeholders and asking the question, are we using this money most efficiently and most prudently? And then public involvement is a key piece of this. We're doing this so that way we can reflect what the user, the people that get on the bus, people that drive the roads, what they want. And so this the survey that we're doing right now is really one way that we're trying to get that information about how people want to see their transportation system in the future. We started this plan for Communities in Motion 2050 last year with a survey that we called A Lot Can Change in 30 Years. And little did we know that not only can a lot change in 30 years, but a lot can change in 6 months. We didn't know we would all be living, a much different lifestyle with the COVID-19 going on. But we wanted people to look back on 30 years ago, and as we look forward 30 years, what's going to be like, the world going to be like in 2050? We wanted people to think about, how did technology change? We don't have these same TVs that we have anymore. How is the demographics going to change? The family structure was a lot different 30 years ago. How is the economy going to change? How are all these things going to bring about new challenges and opportunities that we should start to think about? And we get a good participation in that survey, asking people how they thought the Treasure Valley would change over the next 30 years. We worked with our demographic group to look at a forecast of how many people would live in the Treasure Valley, so Ada and Canyon County, in the year 2050. And I won't get into this too much, but we looked at a few different approaches to a forecast. A cohort component method, which really looks at, what if we continue with birth rates and death and migration rates that we have now? How much will that, how many people will live here in the future? We looked at an econometric approach, which is really, you look at the type of jobs and the number of jobs you have here and the spillover effect and how will that increase over the next several decades. We looked at peer or analogous areas. We tried to find those areas, and no area is exactly unique. I mean, every area is exactly unique. So there's no exact peer to the Boise metropolitan area. But we tried to find those that were, large cities, kind of isolated, largest city in the state, and try to find areas that had some of the same characteristics and conditions that we had. And we said, how much did they grow? And if we are like them, can we grow the same amount? We looked at a top-down method, which really looked at how much is the Rocky Mountain region going to grow, and will we continue to have that share of growth? And then we looked at a trend, and as you can see, that's the largest one. We basically said, if we continue this upswing in growth that we've all experienced over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and we keep that trend up, we'll get to, more than 1.1, almost 1.2 million people by the year 2050. And our advisory group said, all these methods are good. They all make sense. We don't know for sure. I mean, it's forecasting. So let's take these 5 methods, we'll average them out, and our forecast for the year 2050 is 1,075,000 people for the 2-county area. And just so you know, right now it's about 737,000. So that'd be an increase of more than 300,000 people over the next 30 years. And just a few fun facts. This decade, we grew by 156,000, which is about 1.5 times the city of Nampa. So just a tremendous amount of growth just in the last decade. That's an increase of 1.8 people per hour. So every hour of the day over the last 10 years. At this rate, we'll hit 1 million people by 2039. And we continue to expect growth, almost 31 people per day for the next 30 years. So there's a lot of houses to be sold over the next 30 years. But with that growth, there's some challenges. I'm going to talk about 4 that we're noticing, and I'll be curious to hear what other challenges you're facing, as well as you're really hearing from people that are moving around, and why are they moving from one community to another? Why are they moving into the state? One is that we're seeing a lot of growth over the last several decades, and it seems to be somewhat hitting its tipping point as far as what people are willing to absorb in the Treasure Valley. Boise State University does a survey on an annual basis, and just 4 years ago, they asked, is the Treasure Valley growing too fast, too slow, or about right? Almost nobody says it's too slow. Never more than 3% of the respondents. But back in 2016, it was almost a dead heat. 50% said too fast, 44% said about right. So we're getting a lot of growth, but there wasn't that feeling like this was too much for the Treasure Valley just in the last 4 years. And this is a tremendous change, I think, in a pretty short amount of time. Is now 75%, 3/4 of people saying the Treasure Valley is growing too fast. And less than a quarter say it's about right. So obviously there's a lot of feeling like that we're losing the great quality of life that we have here because of all this new growth. And are we accommodating that? Are we bringing it in with the right infrastructure and services to make sure that we're not losing the Treasure Valley and the things that we like about it? The second thing is people, one of those reasons people are concerned about all the new growth is the time it takes to travel. The commute times specifically, with all this new growth, that commutes are going to increase. And I've just taken a few examples here. The green lines show speed loss, up to 20 miles per hour of loss. So if we're going 40 miles an hour today, it would be 20 to 30 miles per hour by 2040. This is based on our current Communities in Motion plan. You can see all the green is where we're going to have some speed loss. Between 10 and 20 miles an hour, light green is 20 and 30 miles an hour. Orange and red is where we are really concerned. These are areas where we're traveling with decent efficiency right now, and in the next 20 years, we're going to lose most of that. Chinden, right now the speed limit is mostly 55 along that stretch. With just the current funded projects that we have, that will lose 40 miles per hour on that stretch, and that's a huge change to what is meant to be an expressway. And you can see that in the travel times from Caldwell to downtown Boise. Right now, it takes about 40 minutes. It would take almost an hour in 20 years from now. To go from Nampa to the Boise airport, 28 minutes now, add 10 minutes to that. And most of these are east-west, but also north-south, along from City of Eagle to St. Luke's Meridian, 20 minutes now, 50% longer in the future, in 20 years from now, 30 minutes by then. And so obviously that has a huge impact on, the gas we use, the time that we have to enjoy the Treasure Valley, the economy. And people are really concerned about that as it could really change the way that we need to get around in the future. The next one I'll talk about is one that you know even better than I do, housing affordability. And I know there's a lot on this chart. Let me just kind of walk through this. In the red arrow is our Canyon County average housing price between 2010 and 2020. So it goes from 100 and basically 110,000 10 years ago to almost $300,000 today. And our annual incomes have in Kenyon County in the blue line have gone from $42,000 per year, just inched slightly higher to $47,000 by the end of 2018. We don't have 2019 or obviously 2020 data yet, but you can definitely see the difference in the line. One exponentially is going up, and one is staying relatively steady at almost a plateau there. So back in 2010, if you were to buy a house in Kenyon County, you would need about 2.6 times your annual income would be your housing price. 110,000 compared to 42,000. In 2018, with how median incomes were about 47,000, and yet housing prices are inching forward. We're now at 5.1 times your annual income, comparing those two together. And if you were to try and keep that same 2.6 times your annual income like we had back at the beginning of the decade, you would need an annual income of $113,000. And not that many people in Kenyon County have that annual income. So we're seeing a divergence from what we have been able to afford in the Treasure Valley to what we can afford now. And obviously those two are widening. There's a big gap there. And that is going to be difficult for those that want to get into the housing market to be able to afford that. Those that want to be able to change their housing, to move into the Treasure Valley. Is that going to keep people from not being able to afford the Treasure Valley and either getting pushed into either farther areas from employment or not move into the valley at all? And then another one that we've heard from people, and that we also heard from in the first survey, is the financial stewardship of our communities. Are we, with all this growth, are we able to keep up the same services and infrastructure that we have now? So Compass recently completed an analysis that we call a fiscal impact analysis that really tries to answer that question and gets into, as cities, as counties look at their comprehensive plans and their land use plans, trying to answer the question of how much does these services cost us? The single family costs different than multifamily, different than office, retail, industrial. What do these different services cost? And when you put, residential on the map, you're also committing as a city to serve that with sewer and water. Schools, do they have capacity? Do our roads have capacity? And so each of those future commitments for land use come with costs. And they also come with potential revenue, the impact fees of different land use types, the property values of different land use types. And there's obviously the trade-off, but at which of these land use types and at which of these locations does the revenues exceed the services? And then that can help us to answer these questions like, should we incentivize certain development? Are there certain locations, infill areas or near employment centers, where we really should try and attract growth and do things, whether it's waiving impact fees or making it easier for development to occur there, because we know that we'll get more revenues than costs if those certain areas or those types of developments can be encouraged there. We can also look at, what if scenarios, like what if demographic shifts change? I think last time I shared with you some changes in how our birth rates were affecting how many new people were going into schools and so forth. And so are we looking at different housing types now that we would have 10 years ago? Maybe there's a shift towards baby boomers who are looking to downsize, or different multifamily versus single family. And then I think I talked about, does location matter? Where there's capacity on the roads or capacity in the schools, there's obviously not as big of a cost to that development. And so really all these questions and this tool has helped us to really get our stakeholders together and say, is growth paying for itself? If not, how? And provide some objective data so that way the elected officials, our decision makers can really have that conversation about growth from a place of knowledge where they can say, you know, what if we did this differently? What would be the ramifications of that? And I think that's something that our communities are really concerned with is, as we're having a lot of growth, are we putting ourselves more and more in the hole, or are we finding ways that we can pay for that and keep up our levels of service? And then finally, technology and innovations. As I showed you that TV from 30 years ago, technology has changed quite a bit over the last 3 decades. I would guess that it changes even more rapidly over the next 3 decades. Anything from 3D printing, that's making it so that way maybe we don't have to drive to the retail store or to, you know, impact our deliveries. Drones that can bring us things. Does that mean we can get more or less vehicles off the road? Does it create a problem by all these drones flying around and potentially crashing into each other or causing privacy issues? Automated or autonomous trucking. So can you take a truck and load up several trucks behind it, and so we only need one driver and the others just kind of follow at an exact pace along with that first truck? Can that create a more efficient freight delivery system? And then how does that work in that first and last mile where you have to get through neighborhoods and into communities? Obviously, we've seen the impact of online shopping over the last 3 months while we've been experiencing this pandemic. And, you know, at what times do you not need to go into the store? Do you just buy that through over the computer and have that delivered? And again, that may reduce the amount of trips that we take as a shopper. We maybe not going into the restaurant or the store anymore, but then impacts the freight delivery. And do we have more trucks coming into our neighborhoods or dropping things off at our homes? Recently, I ordered something on Amazon and I got a little reminder that it was coming, and it said that I was 9th on the list of when I would be delivered. And I swear there was only 8 houses between it and me. So obviously the online shopping and the freight delivery is becoming a huge impact of our transportation system. We also have real-time information on our phones. Hopefully this guy is not driving while he's looking at his phone, but we can get real-time information about delays, congestion, gridlock, crashes that impact our commutes and our drives, and how does that help us to be nimble and navigate around those so we can have more efficient. And then last, the bird scooters you see here, you know, and do these improve? Do they make it so that people don't have to get into a car to drive, you know, a mile or two? Do they make that more efficient and easier, and not worry about parking as much, or do they cause a mess for communities? And I don't need to get into all those, but again, there's a lot of trade-offs with technology and innovations. And all these 4 things, that, you know, are we growing too fast, and are we keeping our quality of life, our affordable housing, our commute times? How does technology and innovation play into this? These were things that we heard and have been thinking about, and we really wanted to get feedback from the from stakeholders and from the community about, and how do we grow together to make sure that we're keeping our quality of life. So we took these 4 things: growth and housing choice. Can we still have a variety of housing choices? Commute times and options, housing affordability, financial stewardship. And we developed 4 scenarios, land use and transportation scenarios, to say which do we all prefer as a group? Which of these do we like the best, and how can we put in place the strategies and the policies to get us to that final destination? And then, as you can see, changing workforce, shopping options, and technology, we kind of embedded those into each one of these scenarios as they will obviously play a role in no matter how we grow. Those are key to that. So again, we're looking at almost 1.1 million people by the year 2050, and that a lot can change over the next 30 years. And we're trying to develop a vision for our future so that we're really working together. Our transportation, our land use choices, our housing options, our economy is really working together, so that way we're creating a system that has that synergy, and we can make sure that we're putting roads where growth is going to happen, rather than always being behind and trying to play catch up. So let me talk a little bit more about those 4 scenarios that we have, and then I'd like to walk you through what the survey looks like. And if anybody's taken the survey, I would love to hear from you, or if you have any questions about the survey, I'd also like to hear those questions, and I can help answer those. As we really, in fact, one of the things we heard was, after we shared the results of that first survey, a lot can change in 30 years. We shared the results of that with our steering committee, and they said, this is really good, but we would really like to hear from people. We said we got 3,700 people in the Treasure Valley to participate, and our steering committee said, we'd really like to hear from people that aren't yet in the Treasure Valley, those that are on their way here. What is attracting them? What is pulling them into the area? And so obviously that's very difficult for us to know how to reach those. But realtors, you're working with these people that are considering or are moving into the Treasure Valley. And so we really would love it if you could help us get the word out about, to people that are thinking about making housing choices and changes, so we can hear from those people as well. So anyway, the first scenario we're calling Let It Be. And really this follows our current trends, mostly suburban development, full-size lots, standard housing that we've had in the Treasure Valley for the last 3 decades. So, a mix of housing, but mostly suburban, large lot style development. And then the transportation system that would serve that would be, again, mostly widening key corridors, maintaining the infrastructure that we have, focusing mostly on moving vehicles, but also we've been working with our Valley Regional Transit on Valley Connect, and including a bus rapid transit on State Street. So a way to more efficiently move buses to make them competitive with the single occupant vehicle on State Street there. So this is our Let It Be scenario. For each of these scenarios, we have a little brief description of what we're trying to accomplish, a collage that hopefully will depict in just a few pictures what we mean by that scenario, and then a map of that scenario showing in purple some of those key roadway widenings. Orange would be the public transportation. You'll also see green on some of those maps, which is active transportation pathways and corridors. And then with the little blobby areas of where growth would occur in that scenario. All of these are a bit illustrative at this point. We haven't, these are not the final word on which corridors, but we wanted to depict 4 distinct scenarios to really help people to see the various ways that we could grow as a community and what would be the ramifications and the trade-offs of those scenarios. So people can have a true understanding of, we can grow this way or we can grow that way, and the transportation system that needs to accommodate that. But also, what would you not be able to have? As obviously we don't have the resources to make all of our wildest dreams come true. We do have to be picky. We do have to prioritize. Excuse me. The second scenario we're calling Ticket or Ride. And this is somewhat the inverse of that first scenario. It provided a mix of housing, but almost a balance between new single-family homes, and the other half would be new apartments near urban activity centers like downtowns and employment centers, as well as along a new commuter rail option that would run between downtown Boise and downtown Caldwell through Nampa. Obviously, that new transit system would need new funding. We could do that through local option sales tax, or perhaps there's other ways, but obviously that would need to be paid for. And with this approach, commutes would decrease because there would be more people on public transportation. We would also be able to preserve farmland because as we grow higher rather than outward, we're not using up as much of that farmland in that suburban style development. The third scenario we're calling Penny Lane, and this really focuses on affordable housing in two different ways. One is identifying those areas where land is cheaper, where costs are less, and providing that full-size suburban style lot in areas where the housing just isn't as expensive as it is in other areas. And then the second way would be providing smaller lots, smaller compact housing, as you can see in the picture, but near jobs. So while the housing would be more expensive, the housing plus transportation would be less because you can either walk, bike, take public transportation, work out of your own home. And so you're getting affordable housing either through less expensive areas or your overall cost of housing and transportation are reduced. And then the transportation improvement to go along with this would be an improvement in walking and biking in town centers, downtowns, in employment centers, so that people would really feel comfortable getting to jobs, getting to services by walking and biking and reducing that overall transportation cost. And then the last scenario we're calling Come Together, which really is focusing on how can we grow as communities and find those areas where we already have services, infrastructure, sewer and water are already in the roads, there's capacity at the schools, and putting new growth in those infill areas so that we don't grow outward as communities. And this would really reduce the impact on our community budgets as we're not, as we're being more effective and efficient with the cost of new services. And again, if we're not growing outward as fast, we would be able to preserve farmland. And this again would, we would need new funding to pay for bike, walk and transit facilities, but buses would serve most of the valley, and every urban community would have buses that ran between them and getting people to job centers. So we're really asking you, where do we grow from here? I am going to walk you through the survey, and my son stole my phone. I have no idea how to tell how much time I've used. So maybe Haley, could you jump in? Am I doing all right on time, or should I speed this up, or should I just cut it off right now? He just had a surgery yesterday and he's not feeling good and he's playing video games on my phone. So I don't know what time it is. Haley?
You're about 40 minutes in.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm not going to walk you through the survey. Sorry, I didn't realize I was so long-winded. I'm not going to walk you through the survey other than to tell you that we really do look at, want to save time for questions. Dang it. Stop. So I'm not going to walk you through the survey other than to tell you that we are asking for your thoughts on your values, what is important to you, whether it's housing affordability, community infrastructure, commute times, commute options. We'll ask you about those scenarios, and then we're going to ask you how we implement those. We have a number of different ways we can get to those final scenarios, but many of them are a big lift, whether it's new funding for public transportation, policies that would restrict growth in certain areas, the ability to pay for different types of transportation infrastructure than we have currently, and then a wrap-up screen that just gets some of that information about how do you hear this, so that way we can make sure that we're getting the word out efficiently and effectively. I'm not going to walk you through that, Ben. Instead, I'll just tell you that your feedback will be used to develop the plan goals for Communities in Motion, come up with that Communities in Motion 2050 vision, and help us to prioritize transportation projects from there, as well as those implementation strategies. Like I said, this is the second in a 4-part series. The first one was a lot can change in 30 years. This is where do we grow from here. The next one will be about that high capacity transit, that commuter rail, whether it's bus, light rail, commuter rail, that will run between Canyon County and Ada County. And then finally, we'll have a survey about funding priorities. And do we pay for roadway widenings, more buses, bicycle and pedestrian? Where do those go? And then we're wrapping up the Communities in Motion plan by 2022. So again, please participate. It's in English and Spanish, and it's open through July 11th. At the end of the survey, you'll have the opportunity to share that on Facebook or Twitter, or email that to family members, people you work with, colleagues, people that you're working with on finding a new home. We would love to get participation, so that way we really know that what the community is saying as far as what they want in the Treasure Valley in the future. So thanks. I'll conclude with that. And what questions, Haley, do we have?
So I got one question, and if people want to go ahead and send in their questions via chat right now, if you have any, that would be great. But one of the questions was regarding, I believe when you were talking about the housing price trends in Canyon County. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but do you know what that trend is in Ada County?
Yeah, I didn't run the numbers for Ada County recently for this presentation. I did those. I did run the numbers about a year ago, and it's basically the same trend, but not as pronounced. So housing is also going up pretty steadily. Median incomes are rising a little faster than in Canyon County, but not enough to keep up with the price of housing. So it is also a problem in Ada County. The income levels probably exacerbate that in Canyon County compared to Ada County, though.
Okay. So, another question is regarding Amazon and regarding growth. What does the infrastructure around Amazon look like?
Yeah. Right now, it's as you probably know, it's mostly 2-lane roads. It's an area that we've been working with the City of Nampa, and it went into our forecast. We anticipated the Nampa Gateway area would have growth in the future. We didn't anticipate it to be as much, and we didn't anticipate it to be as fast as when Amazon made their announcement. And so really it is a scramble, and there isn't sufficient capacity out there, obviously, for the amount of freight vehicles that would, and other vehicles that are going out to that fulfillment center. Highway 16 is in our Communities in Motion plan to be built. The first stretch down from 44 to 2026, Chinden, was built a few years ago. The next stretch is longer and even more expensive. Idaho Transportation Department has funding to purchase right-of-way, but they don't have funding to build the corridor as of yet. In fact, oh boy, this is going to be a risk. I'm going to try and find a picture that, okay, of Highway 16 and the plan. So currently they've built it from State Street to Chinden, and then it would be basically an expressway with limited interchanges and signals. Signal at Chinden, an overpass at McMillan, a signal at Ustick, an overpass at Cherry, a signal at Franklin, and then connect to the interstate there. With that obviously helps the roadway, the regional traffic quite a bit, but there's still a number of roundabouts, widenings along some of the local roads in East Nampa that need to be improved. The growth came a lot faster and a lot more than we anticipated. We thought that there would be office parks out there, but to get that many jobs out there in a quick amount of time, it's very difficult for transportation agencies to react that quickly. So it's going to be a number of years until we can alleviate congestion out in that area.
Great, thank you. Another question that we got is, what is happening to create a southern route around the valley?
Yeah, the southern route is the bypass, is something that elected officials at Compass and at Idaho Transportation Department have gone back and forth on a number of times. In fact, it seems like we have to update our transportation plan every 4 years, and it almost alternates between southern bypasses in our plan versus it's out of our plan. Right now, the southern bypass is not included in the Communities in Motion 2040 2.0 plan. It's possible it could get put back in with Communities in Motion 2050, and that's one reason to take the surveys to give us that feedback. But part of the reason it's not included is that we did an analysis a few years ago about what if we just took, made that a freight route similar to what Salt Lake City did, where they divert freight north of Salt Lake and then it connects back south of Salt Lake. I think it's in Utah County. Would that kind of separate those freight throughputs with the local connections that we need to make? And we found that there was a very small number. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was like less than 5% of trips are through the Treasure Valley, that they don't stop at all. Typically, because we're such an isolated area, freight needs to stop for food, for housing, hotel, to make their deliveries. And so that one reason is not that many people, not that many of the users would use it because they do need to come into the urban section of the Treasure Valley. But then second, if we build that bypass, it would really encourage access and sprawl out to some of those areas where we don't have the infrastructure in place. And so it could really exacerbate those transportation issues that we already have. There's plenty of reasons to have it too. And so again, please participate in our survey. We'd love to get your feedback about that.
Okay. We got another question, and I believe this is in regards to I-84. If there will be freeway off-ramps west of Nampa in the future?
In the next 30 years, well, speaking of Community Motion 2040, so in the next 20 years, the only new freeway interchange that we have planned is for Highway 16, and that would come in right at basically the county line. We don't have any new interchanges or overpasses, not any new interchanges in Canyon County in the 20-year plan. In the next 30 years, we'll still have to do the evaluation and the analysis. Idaho Transportation Department is really trying to keep those interchanges at, several miles apart. And if they put them less than 2 miles together, oftentimes there's that diverging and that weaving to get to the exit or to get on. And so it actually causes more problems than it solves if we put those too close together. So I would not anticipate any more interchanges in the urban section between Ada County and Caldwell other than Highway 16.
Okay, so adding to that, we have any update on the completion of Canyon County Freeway construction?
No, I'm sorry. I don't have an update of more than you probably already know. That is something that I can look into, and I'd be happy to get in touch with Nikki and give you some additional information on the schedule from there. I apologize. I don't have any specific dates, but I could look into it.
And that might be more of an ITD question as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's ITD's road, and so they would have the exact information. I'd be happy to dig it up and share it with this group. It's just not one that I have as far as the schedule for this year.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. We can go over a few questions that we've received before regarding the survey, just to give a bit more information. So one of the most one of the questions we get most often is, um, will the scenario with the most votes win? So can you touch on how we'll decide that a little bit more?
Yeah, in fact, maybe I could pull up the survey, and I'd be happy, more important that I take questions. Um, but if there aren't any questions, let me just briefly go through the survey, show you how it works, and then I can answer that question about um, which scenario, how the scenarios will be used in developing Communities of Motion 2050. So if you haven't seen it, this is our survey. It gives you a little splash screen explaining why we are doing this survey and how we need your feedback. A little bit of information about why we're doing the survey. Most of the stuff I've shared with you already. If you hit begin, it'll ask you, what are your values? What's important to you? And then simply you drag and drop those things that are most important to you and put them in order of those things that you really care about. So let's say I care about choices wherein I live and economic development. If I really care about that, I'm going to drag that one to the top. These 5 then that I've chosen, each will come with a picture, a little description. If you think we've missed any values or that we didn't describe it right, or you would put a different spin on it, please use the comment field right here. But those 5 that say I've chosen will then go into these future scenarios that I went through one by one. The Let It Be, Ticket to Ride, Penny Lane, and Come Together. Each will come with that short description, a collage, and then those 5 values that I picked on the previous screen, you'll be able to see with some performance data about how well that particular scenario serves the values that I said were important. So if I care about economic vitality, I can see this one doesn't do very well. It's worse than the other scenarios. On the other hand, maybe our Come Together scenario, it does really well. The green bar shows that it's really far to the right. And so I can see based on both, the subjective, the qualitative pictures that we have here, but also the objective, the performance data, you can make sure that you're getting the scenario that you want. You can rate those. We're asking you to rate all 3 of them if you want. And then you can go into the implementation screen. And like I talked about, each one of these will require certain things, whether it's HOV lanes, a vehicle miles travel tax, transportation demand management strategies like finding ways for people to work at home and work outside or commute outside the rush hour. Rank all of these as well. And then if you say, you know what, I really like that one scenario, but I don't like any of the things it's going to take me to get there, you can actually go back and you can change your answer. It wasn't as great as I thought it was. Asking you to provide thoughts and feedback on each one of those, and then the wrap-up screen. Now the question was, how are we going to use this? We're not likely going to just say, whichever one gets the most amount of votes wins, unless it's overwhelming that people love one scenario over another. But we're really going to look at the comments that people make, the ratings that people give it, how many 5 stars people love it versus how many 1 stars people hate it. We're also going to look at the implementation. If you love a particular scenario, but people aren't willing to do the things that it takes to get there, it's not really a realistic scenario for our future. So it may be a case where we take the 2 that really score high and we mush those together and we take kind of the best parts of each one of those. But we really need to know which ones that people like. They're pretty distinct scenarios. And so really understanding what values people have and what are the most important things about those scenarios is critical in for us understanding how we want to grow from here.
Great. So we have about 5 minutes left. I want to be sensitive of people's schedules. So if we have any final questions that anyone wants to pitch in the group chat.
Can I ask a question, Haley?
Absolutely.
I'm curious if anybody's taken the survey so far and if they have any feedback or thoughts for maybe other people that are taking the survey later on. Hopefully you all will do this later on today. Can I hear from anybody that has taken it already?
Maybe raise a hand here. Carl, I don't know if you can hear us. This is Chris Mooney we have several of our board members, and I don't know if you can hear us, but Ophelia Montgomery has a comment.
Yeah, I took the survey. The format was very interesting. I think the explanation you gave, though, would have helped greatly had I waited and taken the survey now, because now I can understand it a little bit more. I love the concept that you have at the bottom with the arrows showing the red and the green, because it really makes you think, oh, I think this is best, but based on what you answered before, it really makes you, yeah, think of what it is that you're seeing and kind of look at things a little bit differently. So I thought it was a very interesting format. I wish after your explanation there was a little bit more, and I don't know how it can be done, of explanation to tell people you can go back, you can change this. Please use the comment button if there is anything else you want to say, because I wasn't quite sure what the comments were for.
Did you get all that, Carl?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think it was Ophelia. I appreciate the feedback. That's very helpful to know. And we are having a virtual open house tomorrow where I'll do that. I'll walk through the different screens with people, show them the comments, show them how you can, go back previously. Maybe growth is more important now that I've thought about it and that I've seen the implementation. That is something that we really wanted to make sure that people could do, and maybe we just need to explain a little bit better that that is an option, because we've seen surveys from public agencies that say, do you want parks near your home, and do you want faster transportation, and do you want lower taxes, and do you want all these things? And people say, well, yeah, I'd like all those things. Well, to be totally honest, we can't do all those things. We can't provide parks and buses and keep taxes low and provide everything under the sun. There's trade-offs, and there's ramifications of choices. And so we really wanted people to see, with those performance bars, will this accomplish what you think you want in your Treasure Valley future? So we really want to make this transparent. I'm glad that you were able to see that and like that feature. That's good feedback for us to get, that we really need to highlight that there's multiple ways to take the survey and to kind of go back and forth between the different screens and provide comments. So thank you, Ophelia. Thank you for helping us. Please, as you take the survey, help us get the word out. Please just, you can post this on Facebook, Twitter, email, if you have a listserv, or provide the URL to people. We really want to make sure that we're hearing from a broad spectrum of the Treasure Valley, so we can make decisions with the whole community in mind. So thank you for that feedback, Ophelia. Anything else?
Can we just thank him really fast?
Hey, Nikki,
Oh,
you're on.
hey, Carl. This is Nikki. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to do this for our group, and we will definitely be putting that survey out for all of our members, and hopefully we get a good turnaround from us.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. I sure appreciate that. This is a great group. I love the questions you guys give me, and if you ever need a month where there's a presentation, please let me know. I would love to speak to this group again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Big round of applause. Clap, clap, clap.
And with that, it is 10:30, so we are all done unless we have any last questions. Nope.
Okay, thanks, Haley.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks again.